All right. This is from Justin Carter over at GameDeveloper.com, essentially Game Developer Magazine. But it says, ESA says members won't support any plan for libraries to preserve games online. Very disappointing. Update today? I didn't even see that. Hold on. Original story says the Entertainment Software Association continues to not have a hand in any efforts toward game preservation. The new statements from the organization come in a hearing held by the United States Library of Congress Copyright Office to evaluate a proposed copyright exemption for remote access to archived games for video game researchers. This exemption was proposed by the Software Preservation Network in 2023. During the hearing, lawyer Steve England was asked about the possibility of allowing libraries to preserve legacy games. In response, he said there's currently no combination of limitations ESA members would support to provide remote access. In 2023, the Video Game History Foundation revealed 87% of games released pre-2010 were currently not preserved in any capacity. Attempts previously made by the Library of Congress were halted by the ESA, which said it'd rely on publishers to take care of those efforts themselves. During the call, multiple solutions to address the ESA's concerns over remote academic access to older games were proposed, but all shot down by England. He was not satisfied with either proposals to restrict access to those with academic credentials, implying many institutions would set up simple rubber stamping checks to allow wide access, and derided the idea that limiting the exemption to collections with physical offices would be a satisfactory requirement. On the latter topic, he said that any online-based library could set up a physical office to meet that standard and allow for the creation of what is effectively a free-to-play arcade hosting a huge library of classic game titles. To him, the worst thing for a non-profit organization, or anywhere with an online archive, would be to put a preserved game with, quote, few restrictions online. That kind of remote access would be insufficient progress when it comes to preservation. AACS attorney Mike Ayers spoke up in support of the ESA's argument. In his eyes, there should be, quote, more substance in combating the already restrictive preservation rules. Anybody can have a mailing address, said Ayers. When it comes to just checking boxes as opposed to having anything verified, I would have concerns it's not clear physical premises will actually be effective. During the hearing, other speakers were adamant about something needed to be done about game preservation, and that both England and Ayers were missing the point. VGHF Library Director Phil Salvador argued most libraries take the manpower, expertise, or interest to make a meaningful game. VGHF Library Director Phil Salvador argued most libraries lack the manpower, expertise, or interest to make a meaningful game collection, either physical or digital. Institutions making the active effort to do this are in the single-digit numbers, he speculated. Only specialized institutions and collections could really make use of the exemption for remote digital access. Technology lawyer Kendra Albert argued that the ESA has been unwilling to meet researchers and preservationists halfway on these efforts. Any changes made or proposed, they said, will, quote, never be enough for rights holders for those games. Likewise, they called it upsetting to say scholars' efforts were undermined by the idea of people carrying these games. In Albert's eyes, that remark underlines how deeply out of touch both England and Ayers are about games as a medium. Harming scholarship and teaching because there might be an interest in recreational play doesn't feel fair to them, which put a lot of effort into making these works available. The hearing was live streamed by the Copyright Office and was archived by Australian Twitch streamer Scott Percival. It will be made available on the U.S. Copyright Office's website in a few weeks' time. Excuse me. This sucks. I really think the ESA and its members should be more pro-preservation, but the members of the ESA are not developers. They are publishers. They are IP holders. They are copyright owners. They're the ones who have everything to lose if, their back catalog is archived in a way that archived in the way that they are, or would be, I guess. It just kind of sucks because our industry does just so terribly with preservation, where film studios hold original, like the original films, they archive those, right? I'm pretty sure. Film History Archives, AFI Archive, American Film Institute. The AFI Archive collects and preserves the heritage of the American filmmakers in the art of motion pictures. Yeah. All music studios hold on to the original masters of, or most studios at least, I would assume. Why our industry doesn't? I don't really understand why we don't do that. We should. It is becoming harder and harder and harder to preserve our industry's history. Like, ESA members really need to try to preserve our history better. There was an update to this article today. April 24th. In an email to game developer, the ESA called claims of the game industry shutting down libraries preservation attempts as simply not accurate. We have long been committed to the preservation of video games and support efforts by cultural institutions to build physical video game collections. It's important to note that ESA and its members are committed to the historical preservation of games, pointing to the Copyright Office already allowing legitimate libraries and institutions archiving rights. The ESA stressed it's in favor of preservation so long as it doesn't violate developers' rights under copyright law. The industry's creative and economic vitality depend on strong copyright protections. ESA and its member companies actively support professional efforts to preserve video games and do so in ways that do not jeopardize future economic opportunity for their creative works. So maybe they're pro-preservation, but what do they decide are legitimate libraries? Like just local libraries in general? I don't know. Maybe I need someone to break this down a little bit more for me, because it still seems like they still want to, they being, the member publishers of the ESA, don't want their IPs to be accessed for free. They want it preserved. They don't want to do it themselves. And they don't want it to be preserved in such a way that free access is easy, is what it seems to me. Maybe I'm misinterpreting that, but that certainly seems like the case to me. Either way. And actually, there is more on that. Well, not on that specifically, but a story that I read earlier today. Whoop. That's not what I wanted. Hold on. Sorry, 1 second. Oh, shit. What did I do? Testing. Okay. I thought I accidentally lost connection with my mic. There is another story here that I read earlier today. Atari launches Infogrames, acquires totally reliable delivery service. So Infogrames is back, but as a publishing label. Infogrames was around before. I just don't... What did they do originally? Weren't they a developer? Let's read this article first, because I think it might explain that. But this kind of continues with the subject of games preservation. This is Marie Delisandre over at the deputy editor over at gamesindustry.biz. Atari has announced the revival of the Infogrames brand, relaunching it as a publishing label. Infogrames will focus on publishing and acquiring IP, the first of which being totally reliable delivery service, which it purchased from TinyBuild. The terms of the acquisition were not disclosed, but Atari said it includes the 2019 game, its trademarks, and, quote, underlying property. Infogrames will in particular focus on properties that fall outside the core portfolio of IP associated with the Atari brand. The announcement said, adding that game preservation will also be a core aspect of the label. The new publisher will be led by Atari COO Jeffrey Chaudevieux as manager. He commented, quote, with totally reliable delivery service, Infogrames is starting off with a strong IP that has a loyal and enthusiastic player base. The Infogrames team will be able to expand upon the strong work of TinyBuild and re-energize this high-potential franchise. Atari CEO Wade Rosen also said, for decades, Infogrames built a reputation as a publisher and developer of amazing and eclectic games, and we are excited to bring it back. Cool. A publisher that has a primary focus of, well, hold on. Did he say primary? A core aspect of the label. Okay. So, I don't know what the main focus is, if preservation is a main focus, or if that's just equally a core value or core aspect. Either way, I like seeing more publishers being used to, used for game preservation, because I think that's really important to have. So yeah, good on them for that. This is also more on that. On that news. And this is Chris Kerr, the news editor over at GameDeveloper.com. This is essentially the same story. I think he goes into a little bit more detail, though. Atari has revived the Infogrames publishing label and intends to expand its portfolio primarily through acquisition. The company has already made good on that pledge after purchasing totally reliable delivery service from TinyBuild. Infogrames has acquired the game, trademarks, and underlying property from TinyBuild, which previously published the title, for an undisclosed fee. In its heyday, Infogrames was known for developing and distributing titles like Alone in the Dark, Roller Coaster Tycoon, Driver, and Oddworld Abe's Odyssey through its various subsidiaries. Okay, so that's what they used to work on. Okay, that makes me a little bit more excited. I loved Roller Coaster Tycoon. Continuing, the company had a huge influence on the game industry throughout the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, making a number of significant acquisitions, including the purchase of Shiny Entertainment, GT Interactive, Hasbro Interactive, and the Atari brand. Excuse me. Eventually, Infogrames chose to rebrand under the Atari banner. That decision was made a few years before the company declared bankruptcy, sparking an IP fire sale and years of corporate reshuffling that eventually saw Atari reemerge in its current guise. Atari CEO and chairman Wade Rosen said the newly revived Infogrames will publish titles that fall outside of the, quote, core portfolio of IP associated with the Atari brand. With the launch of Infogrames, Atari is reviving a legacy brand known for game development and global distribution in the 80s and 90s. He said, Infogrames intends to actively manage its catalog of titles by expanding digital and physical distribution and developing new collections and sequels. Consistent with Atari's approach, Infogrames sees game preservations as a core component of its mission. Rosen hasn't rested on his laurels since taking charge of Atari in 2021. Under his watch, the company has made commercializing and reviving retro IP its core business. To realize that vision, Atari has expanded its portfolio with the acquisitions of System Shock remake developer Night Dive and preservation and restoration studio Digital Eclipse. It also recently acquired the rights to Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 from Frontier Developments and has now added totally reliable delivery service to its growing portfolio. So again, and Infogrames, like the makers of Alone in the Dark and Roller Coaster Tycoon, two massive hits back in the day, coming back with game preservation as one of its core as one of its sort of core component of its mission. Sorry, I totally spaced out there for a second. But yeah. I'm excited about this. I think it's cool. Alright. A couple more stories that I... oh, this one's really cool. Hold on. Another one from GamesIndustry.biz. FTC bans non-compete clauses. Commission votes 3-2 to nullify contractual clauses impacting an estimated 18% of U.S. workers. This is Brendan Sinclair over at GamesIndustry.biz says the Federal Trade Commission today published a final rule banning. This was actually yesterday. The Federal Trade Commission today, or yesterday, if you're watching this live, published a final rule banning non-compete clauses in contracts. Non-compete clauses keep wages low, suppress new ideas, and rob the American economy of dynamism, including from the more than 8,500 new startups that would be created a year once non-competes are banned. FTC Chair Lina M. Khan said in announcing the rule. The FTC's final rule to ban non-competes will ensure Americans have the freedom to pursue a new job, start a new business, or bring a new idea to the market. The commission voted 3-2 in favor of the rule, with Republican commissioners Melissa Holyoke and Andrew N. Ferguson objecting. The FTC found that trade secret laws and non-disclosure agreements were already effective measures for the FTC found that trade secret laws and non-disclosure agreements were already effective measures for companies to protect their proprietary and sensitive information without resorting to non-compete clauses. Under the new rule, existing non-compete clauses are still valid for senior executives in policy-making decisions who make substantially more than $150,000 a year, but companies cannot make or enforce new non-competes with them once the rule goes into effect. That will be 120 days from the rule's publication in the Federal Register, but it has not appeared there as of this writing, and I don't believe it has as of this reading either. The FTC first proposed the rule in January of 2023. It received 26,000 public comments on the proposed rule, with more than 25,000 of them supporting the measure. 25,000 out of 26,000. That's insane. An estimated 18% of U.S. workers are currently subject to non-compete clauses. Non-competes are a widespread and often exploitative practice, imposing contractual conditions that prevent workers from taking a new job or starting a new business, the FTC said. Non-competes often force workers to either stay in a job they want to leave or bear... Non-competes often force workers to either stay in a job they want... they don't want, or... Non-competes often force workers to either stay in a job they want to leave or bear other significant harms and costs, such as being forced to switch to a lower-paying field, being forced to relocate, being forced to leave the workforce altogether, or being forced to defend against expensive litigation. Non-competes are stupid. I'm going to be completely frank. it's essentially to hold employees hostage at that company. Like, nobody benefits from that except for the company. Non-competes hurt workers. It arguably hurts. It arguably hurts. I guess competitiveness in workplaces. Because instead of keeping people employed at your workplace, or keeping employees, instead of being able to instead of having to compete with other employers by being a better place to work, by having a non-compete clause, they don't have to worry about any of that, because if someone were to leave the company, they can't go to a competing company with a non-compete clause. So like you essentially, employers are able to protect themselves from from losing talent. They don't have to worry about losing talent as a result of a competing company having something better to offer. They keep talent by forcing you to stay there or leave the field, or essentially go someplace that isn't a direct competitor. I think you guys are getting it. I'm having I'm having a terrible time trying to put the words into it, but they're dumb. It hurts the worker, it hurts competition, and it just sucks. So having that become illegal is good for us as workers. That's basically that. Here we go. So E3 isn't happening this year, but a handful of stuff is happening around that same time. IGN details its answer to E3's cancellation. IGN Live is aimed at consumers and takes place June 7th through the 9th. And E3 was normally the 12th through the 16th or something. Usually that week. IGN has shared the first details of its IGN Live consumer show, which is set to take place at the same time E3 used to. This is by Chris Dring over at Games Industry Biz. And this was actually posted yesterday. IGN Live will be at the Magic Box at the Reef in downtown LA between June 7th and June 9th. The event will feature hands-on with games plus multiple stages featuring interviews, panels, live podcasts, and more. Companies set to attend the show include the likes of Amazon, Atari, Netflix, and Square Enix. It's the latest in a series of events that will take place over that period of time in the place where E3 once lived. Jeff Keighley's Summer Games Fest show is set for Friday, June 7th. This is followed by the Playdays Media Showcase, which is organized by I Am 8-Bit and will run June 8th through the 10th in LA. Ubisoft's Forward event is also scheduled for Monday, June 10th. Other game reveal events scheduled for that time include the Days of the Devs live stream on the 7th, the Future Games show on June 8th, PC Gaming show on June 9th, and Microsoft is also expected to have its next Xbox showcase during that weekend as well. E3, it feels like E3 is back in everything except name. It's not E3 branded. It's not all of these events. I don't think it's all of these events happening in collaboration with each other. They just happen to be happening at the same time. They probably do benefit from each other being all there because everyone's going to be in the mood that week to watch all of this stuff. But yeah, I'm excited for that week because it'll kind of feel like E3's back, even if it's not all, centralized like E3 was. I just miss being able to look forward to that week and just soaking it all in. Just the energy, yeah, the energy, the hype of new games being announced, and it's a really fun time to look forward to what's coming next in games. It's kind of like the Game Awards used to feel like to me. But it's really shown its face over the last few years, this past year especially. I know there's Gamescom, but that happens on the other side of the world at weird times, which is still fun, but with it being in Germany and me being in the US, the schedule doesn't always line up very well. Anyway. I think that's really all the news that I wanted to read for today. I mean, there's other like features and stuff. Did I already read this one? I did read that one. Not on here. I'm just looking at some stuff. No. Yeah. I guess there's not really a lot of other. A lot of these are interviews. I guess let's read this one really quick. Another GameIndustry.biz. If you're wondering why most of these news stories are game developer and GamesIndustry.biz, is because I'm subscribed to their daily newsletter, so these come into my email every day. This year's EGX Games event will take place alongside MCM Comic-Con in the UK. The two events will take place at London Excel for 3 days from Friday, October 25th through Sunday, October 27th. One ticket will provide entry to both shows. Oh, this is over in the UK. The organizers at Reed Pop insist the new combined event will feature all of the elements that visitors love from both conventions, and that it hopes to create the biggest pop culture weekend the UK has ever seen. Following years of success across both MCM, Comic-Con, and EGX, we're delighted that we can finally bring these staple pop culture and gaming events together, said Teresa Hyder Goncalves. I don't know how to pronounce that. Event director at Reed Pop. This has been a long time in the making, and the team are looking forward to bringing an elevated experience to fans this year. TikTok is once again the headline partner for EGX and will bring its content creators to the show. Oh my god. I can't talk tonight, I'm sorry. GamesIndustry.biz is also planning to support the show with business elements, with more details on that to follow. Last year's EGX featured the GamesIndustry.biz Investment Summit and Academy shows, while we also conducted a live interview with famous game developers including Sam Lake, Peter Molyneux, the Sea of Thieves team, and many more. And GI Biz is currently part of Reed Pop, which is the same business that operates EGX. Cool. I guess there's not really much to say about that. It's an event that happens in the UK. Doesn't affect me in the slightest because I'm nowhere near there. But if you are in the UK, then there you go. That's something that you can check out if you'd like to. Okay, I think that's enough news for today. No, sorry. I thought something was going on with my camera. Anyway, that is enough news for today. We are going to take a quick break. If you're watching the news over on YouTube, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you in the next part, in the next video.